Episode 45, Boston Bars and Clubs. When I was 17 or 18 or 19 or 20, I was often able to buy booze even though the drinking age was 21 at the time. Mostly because the bars that I frequented were heavily used by a younger crowd and very lax in carding. The first bar that I frequented was the Oxford Grill, or the OG, in Harvard Square. It was popular with mostly young men, both underage and college age, that gathered in Harvard Square. The allure for Harvard Square was there were many similar age girls also there, going to the Harvard movie theater or Brigham's ice cream shop or the Tasty sandwich shop or the Harvard Coop or other retail stores. Those teenage guys, including me, were almost never asked for an ID at the OG. A few of those young ladies were OG customers too. And of course, I had noticed those young women. Boston, however, had much more diversity of drinking and live music venues. There was one I really liked in Kenmore Square across Commonwealth Avenue from the iconic Citgo sign. It was called the Lounge Bar, and you needed to go down 2 flights of stairs to get to it. It had a big dance floor with a bar, live music, and dancing on the weekends. It was a happy hunting grounds for young guys. I met and danced with many young women there. I met my wife Jean there one night a few months after I had first met her, along with a group of her young Hartford, Connecticut women when they were visiting Boston. Best thing that ever happened to me. Another of my favorite joints was Ferrara's in Scully Square. Scully Square was scandalous in its day. Ferrara's was owned by two sweet boys, although it did not have a homosexual clientele. But it did have Tony Costa from East Cambridge, a blind singing piano player who was a wonderful, funny, and popular entertainer. Scully Square had lots of dirty bars, pickpockets, drunk prostitutes, the old Howard burlesque, and other naked women kind of joints. Another high spot for me was Scully Square's Joe and Nemo's. That was a chain of Boston hot dog restaurants selling 10-cent, good tasting, 12 count, meaning the thinnest natural casing frankfurts, with all the fixings, served with mustard and relish and a really good root beer, and now long gone. That iconic, dangerous, and interesting neighborhood is now replaced by the boring and very ugly Boston City Hall and other less disputable but less interesting establishments. The combat zone on Washington Street near Neyland Street was infamous. There were many disreputable, dangerous bars such as Izzy Ort's, the Palace, Jerome's, the Pilgrim, and around the corner was the most notorious, Hillbilly Ranch. Fistfights, loud arguments, half-naked women, and police busts were the regular fare in the combat zone. There were prostitutes openly selling themselves, plus many strip clubs like the Naked Eye. There were X-rated movie theaters, brawls, and drunken men and women sleeping it off between the buildings. The whole catastrophe, as Zorba said, was right there in the combat zone. Now also long gone. I stayed away from that area, mostly, although I have been to Izzy Ort's and the Hillbilly Ranch. There are many other sections of Boston with bars and clubs. Boston was a great place to grow up. It had character. Thank you for viewing or listening to my podcast episode. I really appreciate it. If you liked it, and if you so choose, I ask you to send a good review and perhaps refer friends who might be interested in this podcast series. Again, my thanks.